The Nintendo Switch 2 could be the land of opportunities for other Nintendo IPs that haven't got as much love throughout history, as well as other takes on certain IPs that also don't get as much attention or love. We've already kind of seen this with the Switch 1 and currently in the Switch 2 of just announcements that's already taken place, games that's coming out or whatever. I mean, some examples from the Switch 1 to Switch 2 are like Mario and Luigi Brothership, the return of the Mario and Luigi franchise, which their last game was 2018, and honestly, after Alpha Dream went under, that seemed like it was gone for good. So when it came back, that was a big surprise. You know, we have a new Rhythm Heaven game coming out next year, Rhythm Heaven Groove. The last game was 2016. We have a new Tomodachi game, Tomodachi Life Living the Dream. That, you know, and the last game for that was a spin-off of Miitopia in 2017. Yes, that got ported up, but the last Tomodachi game was 2013 in Japan, 2014 for us, I believe. We had all the Wii U ports for the Switch, which, you know, that was all just a bunch of good games from the Wii U that got ported up to the Switch to have another chance at life. Not necessarily a new game, but we did have the remake of the Mario RPG, Legend of Seven Stars, simply titled Super Mario RPG. That was cool to come back. We had Famicom Detective Club, which that even got like a whole promo thing where it was teased early with Famicom Detective Club, the Smiling Man, Emio the Smiling Man. Yeah, we did have the 1 and 2 Nintendo Switch 1 ports, but I mean, the last new game was 1997 on the Stellaview. Of course, we had Switch Sports come out. The last new game for that one was 2009. And then coming out here in a few days, we have Donkey Kong Bonanza, the first 3D adventure game for Donkey Kong since 1999 with Donkey Kong 64. So I really think that, you know, we've already seen the possibilities of the land of opportunities with the Nintendo Switch 1, and I think we're going to continue to really see that with the Nintendo Switch 2. I think Donkey Kong Bonanza, Rhythm Heaven Groove, and its Tomodachi Life, I think all of those are just scratching the surface. I know 2 of those I named are also Switch 1 games, and only one of them is a Switch 2 game, but again, I just feel like we're scratching the surface for what the Switch 2 can be for Nintendo, where it's going to just open the land of opportunity, the land of chances, at revivals for a lot of different IPs across the board. I've got 5 IPs picked out that I want to shout out. I wouldn't necessarily say these are the hottest takes on the planet. I think 2 of them are kind of hot takes, so like where it's like, oh yeah, no way that's coming back. But I think the list can go way beyond my 5. I mean, without going into firm details, I mean, I could think we could potentially see the possibility of another Nintendo Land that was only on the Wii U, and honestly, a really fun game on the Wii U. I think we could see, obviously, Mario Baseball make its return on the Switch 2, which did not make it on the Switch, but all the other Mario Sport iteration games did. You know, I think there's a lot of different possibilities for what we could see on the Switch 2, and I would say something like, let's say, Mario Baseball. I think that's kind of a given. That's gonna happen again eventually. We got the new tennis game. We got new golf. We even got new strikers. Which, shout out to that. That was a revival there. Haven't had one of those since the Wii. You know, so that just further adds to the example of like the Switch generation and the Switch 2 generation are all just lands of opportunity. And I think there's a lot of different possibilities of stuff you could see. I think it's possible you could see a new Kid Icarus at some point. Last one we had was, of course, Uprising, which before that was, God bless, basically the originals. Uprising only really became a thing thanks to, you know, Sakurai is coming up like, yo, he's in Smash, let me do something, let's have a good time. I don't know if we necessarily get a Kid Icarus game, but maybe a Kid Icarus Uprising port. I could definitely see that. But I mean, again, we are in the land of opportunity, so let's talk about 5 properties from Nintendo that I think has a legitimate chance to actually come back in some form. And like I said, a couple of these aren't really hot takes. A couple of these are hot takes, and one's just kind of lukewarm. So I'm kind of giving you a little bit of everything here. The first one to shout out is going to be F-Zero. And I know this sounds like, oh God, F-Zero, no way. I mean, hey, well, I mean, technically we did have a new game in 2023 with F-Zero 99. That's technically a new game, so this doesn't count. No, listen, I mean, F-Zero 99, yes, technically a new game, but at the end of the day, it's F-Zero, but with that multiplayer twist to it. I know it does count, but the last actual new game for F-Zero was F-Zero Climax in 2004 on the Game Boy Advance. The last console game for F-Zero was, of course, GX on the GameCube, which did come over with GameCube Online and was actually one of the 3 headlining games for GameCube Online. And I just kind of see that, and I kind of view it as like, man, is that kind of a tease of what's to come? Look, I understand we have Mario Kart World, right? We have Mario Kart as a property in general. That is the racing game. There's always been the question of, can there be multiple racing games existing on the same console for Nintendo when you have Mario Kart that's such a juggernaut? My answer is yes. My answer is yes, not only because, you know, I just simply think it's possible, but also just because, I mean, look at Kirby Air Riders. Who would have thought Kirby Air Riders would come back with the whole new game coming out later this year? With Kirby Air Ride from the GameCube, Kirby Air Riders coming out. Now, granted, if the reports are true, and Sakurai kind of used that as a bargaining chip for a new Smash, so well, number one, that's hilarious. And number two, you know, while that, let's say that is true and this game is going to happen thanks to Sakurai, whatever, man. If Kirby Air Riders does really well, I still think that opens the door for F-Zero. Because the more that I've played Mario Kart World, very fun game. I stand by my stance. I do not think it's worth the $80, you know, price increase, you know, the $10 price increase to $80. I don't think it's worth that. But I think F-Zero can still exist alongside a Kirby Air Riders or a Mario Kart. I think that high-speed action with F-Zero is something that can still exist, especially if you implement something like, you know, F-Zero having their own version of a knockout tour. Like, I think something like that, where you have like the different modes of F-Zero, where it's like standard racing, you have a pro racing, you have a knockout tour racing, like all these different modes. Well, let's say you go with a standard mode where like they make it like Mario Kart World where you can't fall off the map. All right, then you can really get to some high speeds, not worry about falling off or whatever. You're doing your thing, going through it. Maybe they have like a pro mode where you can fall off the map. Maybe you have the knockout tour where it's like knockout tour where if you don't place, you don't finish, or if you crash, you don't finish. I think there's a lot of different ways that you can implement an F-Zero game in today's age. You know, we're seeing some other racers getting some major love, like Sonic Racing Cross Worlds getting some serious love over there. There are some other smaller tier racing games that are coming out and getting love, like the Nickelodeon one. Heck, a new Garfield Karts, which I know that sounds random to say, but Garfield Karts is pretty popular. I think there is a space for F-Zero to exist. And honestly, like I said, I think with it coming to GameCube Online and being one of the launching titles for GameCube Online, I kind of just feel like that's a tease of what's to come. The second one I've got is going to be Star Fox. Star Fox and F-Zero go kind of hand in hand of properties that people like when the moment you hear, oh, what about a new Star Fox game? What about a new F-Zero game? People are like, no shot. Now, Star Fox has had a lot more love than F-Zero has over the years. You know, we did have the Star Fox Command on like the 3DS or the DS. We had a Star Fox 64 remake on the 3DS, I think, and then we have Star Fox Zero on the Wii U, which was a colossal disaster. But even with these disasters left and right, I do think there is a space for Star Fox to return. And my take on Star Fox returning is I actually think we're going to potentially go back to a GameCube route of Star Fox and go with a Star Fox Adventures or a Star Fox Assault, namely a Star Fox Assault. Star Fox Adventures, very fun game. I love Star Fox Adventures. It's a unique take on the property. It was supposed to be, you know, Dinosaur Planet, and then they're just like, well, throw Star Fox into it. And it's basically a Legend of Zelda Star Fox, and that's really cool. But I kind of view something like Star Fox Assault as that possibility of Star Fox returning, where you have a perfect blend of the R-Wing action, the Landmaster, as well as ground combat. You blend the three together. You include a multiplayer like Assault had. Assault, to me, is the best Star Fox game. And I think that treatment for Star Fox is what's going to let Star Fox come back. I think simply just making it another R-Wing type game on rails, whatever, I don't think that's what's going to bring the property back. I know Star Fox also got a little love with Battle of Atlas, but I think for the property to really come back and come back with a thunderous return of some capacity, I think going the route of like an Assault is the way to go and the way it needs to go. And I don't think it's unlikely. I mean, again, let's look at Donkey Kong. Look at the slew of Donkey Kong games that we got after 64, right? We got all the drum games with Konga Kong 2 and Jungle Beats. We got the racing game on the Wii. And then it's just like, well, let's just go back to country because, you know, all the other ones didn't do that well. And we've been on country ever since. And now they're just like, well, you know what? You know, this one's been in development for a while. Yes. You know, it's like, well, you know what? Let's do another 3D game. Why not? Let's do another 3D Donkey Kong game. And it looks fantastic. They've put so much love into it. And it looks great. I think it's going to review and sell really well this year. And I think the same thing can happen for Star Fox, is that, you know, we had Assault. Assault was a great game, very fun. And then you kind of just go back to, well, we're going to do Command, then we're going to do the 64 remake, then we're going to do Zero. There might be something else thrown in there. But I think going back to that format of Assault, I think that is the best way to do a Star Fox game. I think that's the direction we need to go back to. And I think that is actually a real possibility to happen in the Nintendo Switch 2 generation. Coming in at number 3, I've been actually calling for this one for a little while now, and that is the possibility of a Nintendogs return. Nintendogs was, of course, a beloved property on the DS especially, and then it had Nintendogs and Cats on the 3DS. I kind of view Nintendogs as that cozy game that would blow up in today's gaming industry. Okay, perfect example. And now these are two vastly different styles of games. I acknowledge that. Fantasy Life for the 3DS, you know, did its thing. It was a cult classic. People loved it. And look at what Fantasy Life I is doing. It's already crossed 1.2 million copies sold. It's reviewed really well. And it's just because the era that we're in, man. This is the era of, like, you know, cozy games are at an all-time high. Cozy games are coming out left and right. That's a genre that people love to relax and have a great time in. And I just have a feeling that if Nintendogs would come back today, I think it would reach heights that it's never reached before, because like that type of genre of a cozy game is just the right type of game to come out. And I really think that Nintendogs could potentially make that return. You know, I know we had a couple other like pet taking care of type games, pet simulators, whatever, on the Switch, but they weren't obviously Nintendogs, or I believe even made by Nintendo. They were just kind of third-party games that came out that didn't really do well, like Furry Friends or Little Pets or whatever. I don't remember what it was called. But if Nintendo actually stepped forward and actually did a true Nintendogs and, you know, Nintendogs plus Cats game for the Switch, I think it could really blow up. And I have a feeling that they're actually going to look at doing this. You know, this is something that, you know, Miyamoto is very passionate about. I know he's kind of stepped out of a lot of game design. Obviously, he's just there as a public figure. But man, with the passion that he's got for just all of his different properties that he's come to grow and love, I just can't help but to think that maybe Nintendogs is one of those that maybe he might try to, you know, pitch once again, like, hey, let's try to do this. The landscape of gaming today works for Nintendogs. You know, he was, you know, super passionate about the ideas going into Nintendogs plus Cats and that coming out. So I can't help but to think we're going to possibly see the same thing. Nintendogs plus Cats, this has been one that I've been calling for since before the Switch 2 ever launched, and I'm going to keep hammering it on the table that this is something that I really think that we could see. Okay, so the next two on my list, this is where we're getting into some hot take category. You know, Star Fox and F-Zero, those are kind of like just, those are fair takes. Those are kind of cold, not super, you know, unrealistic, where it's like, well, I mean, those are fair things for people to predict, I guess. You know, Nintendogs kind of lukewarm, now these next two, these are pretty hot. These are ones where if people pitch these, you just kind of get laughed at, where it's like, no chance, but that's happening, buddy. What are you talking about? So the fourth on the list that I've got is going to be Golden Sun. The last game for Golden Sun came out in 2010. We did have the first two Golden Sun games come up to Nintendo Switch Online, so that's cool. I think that Golden Sun, as well as my next game, both have the possibility of coming back, is because both of these respective genres have just, like the cozy game genre I was just talking about with Nintendogs, they've just reached new heights, right? Like I'm not gonna sit here and say, oh my gosh, these games are like, this type of genre is back. For example, I saw a lot of conversation around that, let's say around Expedition 33 with turn-based combat, but turn-based combat never left. You just might not have been playing it. That's just calling it as it is. But this type of genre, the JRPG genre, has just reached this whole new height, right? Where I think Golden Sun could potentially come back in a big way. Whether if it's simply a remake of the first game or an entirely new game in the franchise. I don't think that is completely unrealistic. Either route, I think doing a remake route kind of puts eyes back on it. Maybe they do a remake route of the first two games, similar to what they did with Advance Wars, which, hey, Advance Wars is another great example of, hey, we're in the land of opportunities. But Golden Sun potentially making that comeback, in a remake form or with an entire new game, I just don't think's out of the I don't think is unrealistic, especially depending on the size of the game that you make, right? Because one thing that we're seeing a lot of from Nintendo is we are seeing these other properties like the Rhythm Heaven, the Tomodachi Lives, you know, the Advance Wars 1-2 reboot that we had that I just mentioned, plus all these other numerous, like, you know, Famicom Detective Club. You know, we're seeing all these different types of games that are not these massive budget games like a Donkey Kong Bonanza probably is, right? They're smaller scale budget, and that's something that Golden Sun could be, is that smaller scale budget game to get out there, please the cult following, and give it another chance at life. So I just really think that it is actually possible we could see a Golden Sun at some point in the Switch 2 generation. The chances aren't high, but I do think the chances are not zero. And my final take, and by far the most scolding hot take that I've got here, because this is one of the most laughable ones for a lot of people of, yeah, no chance it's happening. Look, like I said with Golden Sun, the chances are not zero, it's just low. Okay, it's not zero, it's just low. The last property that I could actually see coming back for the Switch 2 is going to be Mother/Earthbound. And when I say that, I don't necessarily simply mean a port of Mother 3 or anything. I think if Mother 3 would finally come over here, I think it would simply be Nintendo Switch Online, is that possibility, but they could potentially port it. I know this has been a meme for so long. Even Reggie talked about it in his book, and he was trying for and advocating for it. But listen, here's my stance on it. Turn-based RPGs have continued to grow and reached all new heights. Something like Expedition 33 has really helped further push that and drive that, plus other phenomenal, great turn-based RPGs that has come out over the last few years. Persona 5 Royal taking it to, and Persona 5 in general, taking it to whole new heights as well from a graphical standpoint and what you can do with it, plus numerous others that have come out from over the 2010s and the 2020s. Just JRPGs continuing to grow, yes, but I think there's actually another side to it, right? Of look at the media that is inspired by Mother and Earthbound, right? Like look at, let's say, Undertale, okay, as it, you know, a game, as a property that was inspired by Mother and Earthbound, just as one example. Okay, one example of multiple. The inspiration that Mother and Earthbound has given to the gaming industry is one that needs to kind of probably be talked about a little bit more. And because of that, I just have that sneaky little feeling that out of nowhere, in some form, Mother or Earthbound could make that return to the present day, whether if it simply be, you know, a Mother 3 port or an entire new game into the franchise, whether if it's simply like a spin-off game of some capacity, a whole new game, you know, continuing some story or whatever, right? Whatever it could be, and whatever the art style could be. You know, you also have to think about just the heights that Smash has gotten, you know, the popularity of Smash, and Ness being one of the OG original 12, Lucas being a popular character in the game as well. Earthbound gets that notice and that attention through Smash, and then you know, just again, the inspirations from other properties and other games that have come out heavily inspired by Earthbound or whatever. I just can't help but to think that maybe there's that possibility that Earthbound and Mother could come back in some capacity, or be simply a Mother 4, or, you know, and depending on also how they name it, if they're going to name it Earthbound or Mother, that's also the other thing, because it's named differently per where it's from. But I just have that feeling, and the game style could simply come back as like, you know, a smaller scale project, something like a Mario and Luigi. It could come back as a pixel game as well. I mean, I don't think like a 2.5D art style. I think people would be pumped for something like that. I don't view the chances for a new Mother or Earthbound game as zero. I just don't. I don't think it's high. For sure, it's not high. I'm not going to say bet your mortgage on it or anything, but I'm just saying it's not zero, and it's something that I think we could talk about. I think it's something that we could actually predict for the Nintendo Switch 2 generation, is a new Mother Earthbound. And, again, probably a hot take, but I think it's a fair take to at least throw out there to at least consider. So that's all the main takes that I wanted to talk about for this video. I mean, some other things that we could potentially see is I've been hammering that we're going to see an Ocarina of Time remake. I think that's going to be really cool. I would love to see a new Wario Land or a new Wario World, one of the two. That would be awesome. I've never been a fan of the WarioWare games. Like I mentioned earlier, I think Mario Baseball is one that's set to return. I think there's going to be a lot of fun comebacks that you're going to see from the previous console generations, even if it's just simply going back one gen and maybe we get an ARMS 2 potentially being a thing, maybe an Astral Chain 2, right? Like there's all sorts of different properties that Nintendo could, you know, tap into and bring back. These were just like the main 5 that I wanted to kind of really talk about a little bit more in depth, as messy as in depth as it probably was. So I do apologize for that. But if you made it all the way to the end, I appreciate the hell out of you. Subscribe to the channel, be a friend, tell a friend. Make sure to also check out Gamesthetic. We go live pretty much every single Saturday for the most part. And if you want to support us further, Patreon's a great way to do so. And drop your thoughts down below on some possible older titles or takes on games, like maybe like a, you know, like what we have with Donkey Kong Return to 3D. What is a take on an existing property that you could see returning, right? You know, what are your thoughts on the 5 that I named? What predictions do you have? Am I an idiot? Please comment down below and tell me any of that information. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for making it all the way to the end. Have a great day. Bye.